Welcome to Get Wed,
a podcast to plan your wedding by.
I'm Katie.
And I'm Kerrie.
And we're both here as professional photographers
and brides-to-be to help you plan your big day.
Each week we'll discuss a topic that you'll encounter along your wedding planning journey.
And with the help of fellow industry experts, we'll navigate this crazy wedding world
together.
Welcome back to Get Wed, everybody. We have another episode this week with a guest for you, and this week is such an exciting topic. I think this lady has got my dream job. So we're talking to Amanda from Amanda's Ark, who basically runs a pet sitting and walking business, but also does wedding chaperoning. So if you wanted your dog at your wedding, Amanda is your girl. So Amanda, could you just tell us a bit about you and your business and how it all started?
Sure, yeah. Well, hi, it's lovely to meet you, and thanks for having me on the podcast. It's really exciting. Well, for me, I've been running my business now as a pet sitter since 2002. I basically, I worked in London, I worked for the NSPCC, and I was living in Sussex, and I wanted to have children and I wanted to run my own business, and I knew that it would be around dogs. And I just had one of those light bulb moments where I thought, right, I'm going to be a pet sitter. And I hadn't even looked into whether there was a particular demand for it, or I just thought that's what I'm going to do. And it was 2002 and 2003, 2004, I had my children. So it was all very, very quick. And it's just evolved from there, basically. And there's a massive demand for it. And what I've learned over the years is that my clients over the years, the ones that are getting married, they want their dogs at the wedding. So it's just evolved. And the beauty of it as well is the fact that it's demand driven. It's not something that I've had to push. This is what people want. They want to involve their dogs in their wedding because they're part of the family. So it's something that I knew people wanted. But when my children were little, I just didn't have the time to develop it, you know. Yeah. And now that they're 13 and 14, I can go to wedding shows and I can just basically let people know that this is a service that is available. So that's where it stemmed from. So particularly 2016 is where it's really started, just because my children were old enough for me to then start pushing it as an idea. So, yeah, so that's how it started. And I mean, the first wedding show I did, I walked in thinking, oh, my goodness, are people going to, or are the suppliers going to kind of buy into it? I knew that the brides, I knew that the couples wanted it, but I still felt like it was a whole new world. Were people, suppliers and venues, you know, how were they going to take it? And it was just fantastic from the word go. I had people coming up to me, the suppliers just going, we love what you do. It's just, the thing is, it's something that people want, but they don't know that there is an option available. So, you know, the beauty is when people come to my wedding, come to the wedding shows and they see our stand, they read through our pop-up banner and you can just see the smile on their face because they see that there's a solution because they want their dog there. Yeah. But logistically, they just don't know how that's going to work. So we're offering that solution. So
that was the problem that I noticed at our wedding. So we got married in June last year, and because our dog is only ever really looked after by family, the biggest problem we had was what we were going to do with him for the rest of the day because he had no one to go to. And I don't know if I'm too soft or he's too soft, but I could never put him in a kennel. So
no, I couldn't.
Yeah, and that's exactly why. Where my business evolved from, because people don't want to put their dogs in kennels. And growing up, my parents never put our dogs in kennels. Our life was built around the dogs, and now really and truly, there are so many other options that dogs don't need to go in kennels. But I think because as a nation we are such dog lovers, and our dogs are so instrumental in that family unit, that it's just so alien to take them out of that and put them in a kennel. And definitely. You know, and of course for you, it's just like, well, that just would ruin your holiday or your wedding, or, you know, to know that your dog is isolated somewhere, that they're not happy. So, but the beauty of this means that we take care of all those logistics. So like for your wedding, say we could have had, your dog's name is?
His name's Tagg.
Tagg.
Yeah.
Name. So Tagg would have been with me before your wedding, and then we would have taken him to the venue, had the wedding photos, and then taken him back. So then we're there from beginning to end, and that means you know that he's happy, and he's with me, excuse me, and then he's coming back to my house. So it's just a nice home from home, you know, and it's not stressful for you because you can relax knowing that he's happy.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And have you noticed that there's loads of couples now wanting you just for weddings to look after their dogs?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always busy with my home dog boarding, and I have so many dogs that I've had for years. But for me, I know that this, as a business idea, the demand is there. It's just letting people know that it's an option, and that's what I find every time I go to a wedding show. I don't have to do the hard sell. It's not like, oh, you know, would you like this? It's purely you just see the joy on people's faces. They either read it, and some people will say, my dog would be a nightmare. That would just never work. Which I always say, well, you know your dog. So if that's the situation, then no, you wouldn't want your dog there. It's going to be stressful for you and it's going to be stressful for the dog. Or people read it. And I just love watching them. You can see their eyes move down as they're reading the banner. And then they get this big smile on their face because they're like, oh, I can have my dog at my wedding. I didn't know, you know, and it's really lovely to watch because what we're offering is a solution to something that you would like, but people tend to leave it towards the end of the process of their wedding. They kind of think in their head, I'd like my dog there, but we haven't really worked out how that's going to be yet. And so it's something they've kind of left towards the end. And then they see we have a solution. So,
what advice would you kind of give to a couple who are sort of thinking, right, this is what we want to do now?
I think in terms of advice, I think keep it simple. You want to involve your dog, but you only actually need a few photos with them. So, you know, keep it simple. Don't get over elaborate in terms of their involvement. It's like working with small children. You know, you just kind of want to get in quick, get the photos, and then just let them go. So, but the key thing with the dogs is that because we're not part of the wedding party, as an example, a wedding we took a chocolate Labrador and we'll just take him for a walk around the grounds. Then when the photographer wanted to do a shot of the groom and the best man before the wedding, we just brought him in, had that photo done, and then took him off for another walk. And because he's not, the dog wasn't part of the whole wedding drama, he stayed really relaxed and you could get a really good photo without him being, you know, hyped up. And the key thing for me is I want to keep the dogs calm and relaxed and happy. And if it's a hot day, you want to make sure that they're getting drinks. And then you get the pictures that you want because the dog's really relaxed. So in terms of advice, I would say just think about what sort of shots or where in the venue you'd like to have the photos done. Do those wedding photos before you start involving everybody else. And then the dog's role is finished and then they can go. And that's also better I find with the couples, they would just rather know that they've had their pictures with their dog's happy, the dog's coming home with me, and then they don't have to worry about them. And it does. So I always think, you know, have a look at your dog and just be honest with yourself in terms of how much they could cope with. Some dogs we take for a meet and greet with the guests, which is lovely. So whilst we've done the wedding couple, and whilst they go off and have other photos taken, we've gone and just wandered around with the guests with the dog, and so people can take and what's lovely is people then take their own photos of, you know, their friends, family with the dog. And I know one of my brides said she loved it because there's all these photos of her friends and family just taken randomly with the dog, and it's really nice. And it's a nice little thing to do for your guests as well. It gives another level of interaction and interest whilst, you know, the photographer's doing the main photos. So but again, it's all about knowing and being honest with yourself in terms of how much your dog can cope with. You know, because really and truly you only want 2 or 3 photos with your dog, and if they're the right ones. You know, I went to a wedding, Hengrave Hall, just before Christmas, and myself and the dogs, we were there for literally 20 minutes, but those 2 shots that the photographers have got are just stunning, and, you know, and that's all you need. And my role really is, in that situation, we had a lurcher and a border terrier, and the bride and groom had them both on leads and one either side. So the bride was holding the lurcher and the groom with the border terrier. And so for me, I'm standing behind the photographer and just getting the dogs to look at me and just calling them and getting them to focus. And of course, the greyhound was fantastic, and the border terrier is like looking everywhere. But then that's when I have, I stand behind the photographers with a gravy bone and just get the dogs to look at me. And they got 2 fantastic shots, and that's all you need. And then it's like, right, the dog's role is finished. They're done. The couple can relax because they think, right, our dogs can now go back to Amanda's. They're happy. And it works fantastically. So
that leads me quite well into a question I have for you as well, is how much training do you think you should give your dog to deal with being at a wedding day? So, for example, we had ours come down the aisle. So
right.
And we didn't know how it was going to go, whether it would just go horribly wrong. But we did take him up to the venue a few times and practice having him stay at the end and then come towards us when he called. And he did do it really well, actually, which was surprising. But even for like photos where you want the dogs with the couple, is it just a chance of maybe getting them used to staying and then having a picture?
I think, well, as an example, one of the dogs we had is a chocolate Labrador. So, by very nature, he could have been bouncing around and hyperactive. But I think the key is because they're not part of the wedding party, they're really relaxed because, we are very, very separate. So, we'll, as an example at that wedding, so we're wandering around the fields having a nice walk and then just come in at those key moments. So there isn't that time to build up the, look, it's Charlie, and everybody starts patting and, so it's very quick. And I think then the dogs are a lot more pliable at that point because they're relaxed. So we just tend to take gravy bones, keep them calm, keep them relaxed. And even though they will, they'll see their family, so their mum and dad, they tend to be a little bit, they kind of step back from the whole event. I think because everybody looks so different for a start, so many times they've looked at their mum like, that's not my mum. What is she wearing? So they do tend to be very much they're with me. And I think that does keep them calmer. In terms of walking down the aisle, I think, the key to the whole thing is keeping it short and keeping it simple. And if you know that your dog would be compliant and you could get them to walk down the aisle with you, that's great. I would either keep them on a lead, just so that they're not, because, it may well be quite overwhelming when there's lots of people around. Keep them on a lead so then you know that they're going to stay with you. They know where they're going. And then they can come in and out quite quickly. But gravy bones work a treat. And as long as, and I think, if they're not surrounded by lots of people, because you see the change in them so quickly, yourself, if, you're with your dog, it's just you, and then you walk into a room and there's lots of people, then they're going to get excited. So I think that's why it works well, because if you were to take your own dog to your wedding, so a member of your wedding party was to be handling the dog, yourself as photographers, you're trying to get that shot and then somebody's trying to be in the shot, but they're holding the dog, or the dog's getting more and more excited because little children are going, oh, look, it's the dog. And then you're trying to get a photo with that dog. So for us, photographers love it because they can say, okay, we don't need you for these couple of shots, but if you could just come back over for this. And so there's more direction. And because our focus as well is purely about the dog's welfare and the environment that we're in, I'm much more tuned into how the dog's coping. So, I've been at weddings where we've done a couple of shots and then they've said, oh, can you bring the dog into the main area where all the guests are to say hello? And that was lovely, but then it was really hot. So for me, I will always say, well, do you think you've got enough pictures? Would you like one more? Because, your dog's getting quite hot. I think they're ready to leave. And I'm happy to make those decisions because my role is about making sure that the dog's happy and healthy, the public are safe and the venue is safe. So for me, I will always kind of make that call.
Lovely. Yeah. What do you actually do if a venue says we don't really like pets here, or is there any way
do you know what?
Yeah,
exactly that. Because in the last year since I've really started to develop this idea, I mean, it's not a new idea, it's just that it's not available on a large scale. No, it's so niche because so many people say to me, I just would never have known that was a thing. But the reason I know there's a demand for it, because my clients have asked me over the years. So but in terms, so I then started to go to venues. Like this time last year, I was phoning up venues and saying, this is what I do. Some venues, it was fantastic. They just literally, their words were, oh my God, we need you. So many people. Good. Yeah, because so many couples will say, what about dogs? Can we bring our dogs? Are they out on site? Blah, blah, blah. And they are dog friendly venues, but the venues don't want to be the ones that are left looking after the dog.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which is fair enough. They've got enough to do. And so, you know, they love what I do because it helps them, and it's great for the couple because our role is purely about the dog. However, I have had other venues who've said, oh, our owners don't like dogs. And I've actually gone back and said, but the thing is, this is demand driven. So it's not about, if you have a business, you know, it's not about what you like as such. It's like, this is what your clients are asking for. So as a venue, if you have the grounds and you potentially are dog friendly, then it's kind of within your interest to accept dogs. You know, of course, there are always stipulations in terms of areas to go. I mean, I always meet with every venue. I will do like a recce of the venue. We'll go around and I'll say, okay, so where are the dog-friendly areas? Which areas would you like us to stay within? And that works fantastically. But I have managed to get some venues to turn around their thinking, because I said it's not just about me saying this is what I can do. It's about you offering something that clients are asking for. You know, and if you don't offer that, then that may be the deciding factor that says, well, actually, we'll choose another venue.
Yeah, that was for us. Like, we chose our venue purely on the fact that we could have our dog there. So that was a really big, important factor for us. So
yeah, and I think a lot of the venues just haven't really given it that much thought, you know, because they haven't really looked at from the bride or from the couple's perspective, the logistics of having a dog there. So they're like, yeah, we're dog friendly. You can have your dog on site. But in terms of what that means for the couple, you know, you do need another person involved to look after the dog, basically. So the other area is registrars. That's a whole new
I was just about to bring that up.
Yeah. And see, for me, I like a challenge, and I like...
That's a polite way of saying it.
Yeah, I like a challenge. And I have had conversations at wedding fairs. I saw a big group of the registrars recently, last year actually, at a wedding fair. And I had this conversation. I kind of said, you know, kind of not going to like me. However, what I'm doing is really going to help you.
That sounds like my job as well.
Yeah, I know. I'm learning so much about photographers and how.
Sorry, carry on. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, I know. It's so with registrars. I thought, right, well, I quite like a challenge, and what I'm kind of learning about this whole wedding world as I'm going along, which is really fascinating. But with the registrars, they knew that I was talking about a particular bride, and they were talking about a particular bride. But basically, they're so strict. It's in Essex, I think you're allowed to have dogs, because it seems to be different by county for the registrars. So I know in Essex, there's a lot more flexibility about dogs being within the wedding ceremony. In Suffolk, it's a blanket no, and that's purely because it's an unknown. It's something that could go wrong.
It seems so silly though, doesn't it, really?
Well, yes, particularly because one of the examples they give is, but a couple had two owls as ring bearers in a barn, and lo and behold, the owls went up into the rafters with the rings. So as you kind of would expect.
But your dog can't fly, so it's not really going to be.
This is it. My dogs can't fly, so we're all right.
So does that mean it's a complete blanket ban on animals in Suffolk?
Yes. Yeah. But I think it's just something that they've just said, you know what, we're just not going there. So I'm trying to educate them in a way to say, well, actually, by me being there, my role is purely about the dog.
Making sure it goes smoothly.
Yeah, because they have issues of what if the dog wheezes, or what if the dog, I don't know, causes havoc. But the point is, I am there to chaperone the dog. So the dog is with me at all times. If I'm starting to think, the dog's looking a little bit stressed, or the dog needs to go to the loo, or I will take the dog out. And the wedding that where this was a particular issue, it was nice because what the registrar in question, she was a lot more flexible, and she said, well, actually, although this dog can't be ring bearer, Ralph the pug can't be ring bearer, he can come to the side door at the courtyard, so when it's time for the rings, they can open the doors, the usher can come over, get the rings off the dog, and so that he had his little moment, and everyone got to see Ralph in his finery and go, oh, it's Ralph, it's lovely. And I was trying to get him to put his paw over the threshold just to push the boundaries. And and so it was nice. So he was included, albeit not in the way that he wasn't walking down the aisle. So what I'm trying to educate is that there are ways that we can be a little bit more malleable. We can be a little bit more responsive to people wanting to include their animals and still fit those guidelines. And I'm hoping over the next couple of years they'll think, well, actually, the job that Amanda's doing means that dog is going to be fine. And the thing is, I assess all my dogs. I don't take every single dog that people want for their weddings. If I think that, I assess them for their behaviours, for their sociability, because I have to know that dog is safe with me. It's going to be safe around the public, with the venue, because it's the responsibilities on my shoulders. And also, at the end of the day, you want good pictures. So if you've got a dog that's going to be temperamental or potentially aggressive, or the other end, really, really anxious, then I'll kind of make that decision and say, it's not going to work, And that's really important. So for me, with the registrars, I will always say to them, but I'm assessing every dog, its behaviour, as I would normally if they came to board in my home. I always assess their behaviour, how they are with other dogs, how they are with people, because I need to be confident that dog's not going to turn around and create a situation. So.
And how does the process sort of start with you? Do you have to contact you in quite a lot of notice, like a year's time, or?
It's the same as my boarding. I always say to people, let me know as soon as you know, and then I can book it in. So, because with my booking, I've got like 18 months ahead with dog boarding. And with weddings, as the bookings come in, so, if you're getting married in 2020 and you've got the details, then I'll book that for you. So, and also because I work with my colleague, Emma, I'm training, she's coming with me to all the weddings that I'm doing, and also to the wedding shows. So, we have the same ethos. It's really good because we have the same sense of humour. So we have so much fun at the wedding shows as well. And just in our attitude in talking to the clients, because we have the same passion and the same belief. And so going forward, Emma will be able to chaperone dogs herself anyway, so we can kind of split. If we have a wedding on the same date, then we can split it. So yeah. But in terms of booking, we asking about the process or the?
Yeah. So sort of how does it work? Should you meet the dog before? Do you come to people's houses? Or
I get them to come to meet me, because I think for any situation, whether it's dog boarding or if I'm feeding somebody's cat, I always like them to come to my home, because I think it gives a more three-dimensional perspective of me as a person. They can see my home, how I live, where I live. Okay. And so I get the couple to come to see me with their dogs, have that first meeting, and then within whichever package they choose, I have the dog to stay for at least a day and another half day within that package. Sometimes, if we're talking like a wedding that's 18 months away, then there'll be other dates where we can book some boarding as well, just so that we build up more of a relationship. And then, so by the time the dog comes to stay with me, we already have that bond, and and you can always tell they're always happy. They come flying in the door and like they know where they are, which is really nice.
Oh,
so yeah.
And do you sort of serve all over the country? Could you go to somebody further away, or are you more Suffolk, Essex, Norfolk?
Well, I'm kind of thinking big. So I'm willing to travel. So like I'm more Suffolk, Essex, and into London, probably Hertfordshire. I tend to look at going that way, but as you know, as we grow, and it's purely about people becoming aware of what we do, then I'm happy to travel. So I wouldn't limit it to a local area. It's a very niche service that I offer. So I just think it's more about the couple and the wedding and the dog. And if the situation's right, then I'm happy to do it. So
yeah.
yeah.
And is it expensive?
Yeah. The price starts at £300. So not really.
No.
I have 3 packages, so I can have the dog arrive on the morning of the wedding, and the dog would come here to my house, and then we would take them to the wedding venue. We're usually there. It's probably about 2 hours. We're there before the groom arrives, and then we would leave before the wedding breakfast. So, and invariably the photographers like to do the photos with the dogs before the rest of the photos anyway.
Yeah.
And then I offer packages. The second package is the day of the wedding, and then the dog stays overnight and you pick up the following day, or you drop off the day before the wedding and have the wedding day and the wedding night. So there's different packages. And
that works nicely, doesn't it?
That starts off, say, around £300. And I have the capacity to bring extra dogs. So if you've got 2-3 dogs, we can work that as well. And so that's for 2018, 2019 pricing. But what I find as well, what's really lovely is that I say to a lot of couples that it's a nice gift as well. So if they're kind of becoming aware of my service towards the end of their budgeting, which has happened at the beginning because I'm new, whereas now, because I'm working with venues as a recommended supplier and because I'm working with photographers, it's nice that I'm coming in earlier in the process. However, so if people are coming in at the end of the process and, you know, they're limited on budget, it's a really nice thing for like bridesmaids to buy as a gift. I have another bride who her auntie and uncle have paid for, so her dog can be there. And it's a really nice gift because it's really special. It's so personal.
Really thoughtful, yeah.
Yeah. So that's another way to do it as well. So
that's really nice.
Yeah.
I love the whole idea of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, I do. I do kind of pinch myself because I love doing this, and it's purely born out of demand. And I think that's the beauty of it because people want it. So I'm basically just going out there and saying, okay, I've got a solution for you. You know, because there are so many times I've heard of people saying, well, I wanted my dog there, but then my dad would have had to go home, pick up the dog, bring them back. And then that whole thing of, well, you know yourself, your family are there and you want them there, but you know that someone's kind of thinking, oh, I've got to go and check on my dog, or I've got to go and, you know, and you feel like they're not 100% involved. So
yeah, it's so much better.
It is. And when I've been at wedding shows, people have just said, I want to pay for that because that takes the stress off me and I know that it's sorted. And, you know, on one occasion we had a lady, she was getting remarried and her 3 sons were ushers. And the youngest one was going to be in charge. It's Ralph the pug, actually. The youngest was going to be in charge of Ralph and an usher. And when the lady saw me at the wedding show, she just said, well, let's just do that. Because if I can pay you, I know that my son can focus purely on being an usher and you can focus on Ralph. So then you can check that he's okay. And then, you know, she didn't have to worry about, is Ralph too hot? Are people looking after him? And also on the day, you know, the son was just so relieved because he could just focus on his job. So
you can drink and have fun and not worry.
That's it. Yeah. And as I say, so many brides say to me, I'm just so relieved that you're doing it, that I'm doing it, because I get to know their dogs. So they don't have to worry about, you know, is their dog okay? Because they know that my role is purely about the dog's welfare. So
yeah, it's so nice that a service like yours actually exists, because all the weddings that I've done before in the past where dogs have been present, there hasn't been anyone chaperone. It's always been a member of the family, or they've had a venue where they've got accommodations, so they'll kind of go get the dog for a bit and bring it back and then keep checking in on it on the night. So it's nice to know that there's an actual dedicated service for it now.
It does. It takes that pressure off. I mean, I know even as an example, when my children, when it was their christening, and my dad would keep popping out to check on his dogs, and you're like, but I want you here. You know, you want their focus and attention. And you know how it feels when you're somewhere and you're like, I just got to keep checking. You know, you're kind of not as involved as you could be. But certainly photographers say to me, they just like the fact that my role is purely about the dog. So, you know, you have enough to do organising the wedding party and getting them where you need them without the dog.
Yeah.
That's the beauty.
Going off
the
with
dog
the mother-in-law and disappearing. Or,
yeah. And the dogs stay so relaxed because, you know, we just kind of amble in, take a photo, and then we go off again. And then, so it's not, they haven't been hyped up like, yeah, we're at a wedding, there's all these people. And, you know, and then you're trying to get your dog to look at the camera because it's very rarely going to happen. So that's how, you know, when I look at some of the wedding photographs that we've been involved in, the dogs look so calm and relaxed because they've just kind of wandered into shots, sat down and gone off again, you know. So it just works, and it works. So it's a joy to do, and I kind of I'm really excited that not that I found it, just that I've got the time to do it now. So it's lovely.
Lovely. So if somebody wanted to book you, how can they go about contacting you? Tell us all your details, because I'm already going to pass you on to a few people, I think.
Oh, fabulous. Thank you. So my website is www.amandasark, so Amanda SARK.co.uk, because my house is like Noah's Ark. And there's dedicated wedding page within my website. I am also on Instagram and Facebook, which you can again link straight through on my website is the easiest way to do that. But I am always available. I take texts, emails every day of the year. It's really hard to switch off, isn't it? I just like, oh, someone's messaged me, I'll just reply.
It's a true sign of your passion. It's fine.
It is. I just think, I mean, I love what I do, and I know that when people inquire, they're kind of waiting to know, can I have my dog? You know, so yes, I'm probably too available. I'm just always
Oh, perfect. So it's been really lovely chatting with you, and like I say, it sounds like a total dream job.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. It's a joy. It's a joy. So
I'm so glad there's a solution, and we can hopefully pass you on, and people know that they can bring their dogs. So
see lots more dogs at weddings in the future. That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, absolutely. I love it. So thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. We really hope that you've enjoyed this episode of Get Wed. Don't forget you can always subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, and while you're there you may as well leave us a review. You can join us for more wedding chat in our Facebook group if you just can't wait until next week. You'll find all the links that you need via our website, including show notes for this episoded over at getwedpodcast.co.uk. We'll see you next time. Happy planning!